we need to tackle segregation. There are parts of Britain today where you can get by without ever speaking English or meeting someone from another culture. Zoom right in, and you'll see some institutions that actually help incubate these divisions. Do you know that in our country there are some children who spend several hours each day at a madrasa? Now let me be clear, there's nothing wrong with children learning about their faith, whether it's at a madrasa or a Sunday school or a Jewish yeshiva. But in some madrasas, we've got children being taught that they shouldn't mix with people of other religions, being beaten, swallowing conspiracy theories about Jewish people. These children should be having their minds opened and their horizons broadened, not having their heads filled with poison and their hearts filled with hate. So, I can announce this today. If an institution is teaching children intensively, then whatever its religion, we will, like any other school, make it register so it can be inspected. And be in no doubt, if you are teaching intolerance, we will shut you down.
I'm going to talk about something which is very pertinent, very important for Muslims in the UK. I just want to reiterate something which most of you may have heard on mainstream media. Maybe you have heard it in small amounts on social media. But it's our Prime Minister's statement on Wednesday the 7th of October 2015, when our Prime Minister David Cameron made his keynote speech to the Conservative Party conference. Now, one of the things that he said, or some of the things that he said, was, did you know in our country there are some children who spend several hours each day at a madrasa? Let me be clear, there is nothing wrong with children learning about their faith, whether it's at madrasas, Sunday schools or Jewish yeshivas. But in some madrasas, we've got children being taught that they shouldn't mix with people of other religions, being beaten, swallowing conspiracy theories about Jewish people. These children should be having their minds opened, their horizons broadened, not having their heads filled with poison and their hearts filled with hate. So I can announce this today. If an institution is teaching children intensively, then whatever its religion, we will, like any other school, make it register so it can be inspected. And be in no doubt, if you are teaching intolerance, we will shut you down. Now, I'm sure most of you have heard this statement from our Prime Minister. There's some very, very important message to take. Moving on from there, I just want to point out a couple of very, very important things. The first thing, in response to our Prime Minister, first of all, I just want to put right a very, very, very important issue. And that is the issue related to Muslims in Britain. And this thing about British identity and how Muslims are averse to this British identity. Faith Matters, which runs the Tell Mama hotline, for Faith Matters is quite a recognised organisation. It claims and it says that its surveys have shown more British Muslims were more likely to identify with Britain than the general population, and were more likely than Christians to say they felt they belonged to the UK. That's a statement in itself. We are led to believe that Muslims do not identify with Britain. And not too long ago, Mr. Pickles from our government used the kind of language that we commonly associate with the far right, when he suggested that we have an important responsibility as Muslims. We have an important responsibility in explaining and demonstrating how faith in Islam can be part of British identity. That's something that we would not have been surprised to hear from the words of the mouths of somebody like Tommy Robinson or even the English Defence League. These are our leaders. These are those very same people that we have voted for to be in those positions. They're not just leaders for Christians. They're not just leaders for those who have no faith. They are not leaders for the Jewish community. They are leaders for the Muslim community. We have appointed them and nominated them in those positions. So why is it they stand there in their leadership position and they stand representing everybody except Muslims? There's a couple of very, very important issues I also want to put forward. And this is more so in relation to the PREVENT agenda. And most of you have heard about the PREVENT program that's out there. And I think it's absolutely clear we need to understand what this PREVENT program is about. One, there is absolutely no evidence to suggest that ideology, whether it be Islamic ideology or any kind of ideology, leads to terrorism. Now this is not just my statement. You go to all the social scientists, you go to all the literature and the research that's out there. Let's talk about this scientifically. There is absolutely no evidence to suggest that Islamic ideology leads to terrorism or political violence. Number two, attraction to ideology is related to political, structural and economical, social, as well as social exclusion factors. So this concept of being attracted to a particular ideology, which is political violence, is more related to political and structural and economical social factors, and by socially excluding communities. But what does PREVENT identify? PREVENT, the program that has been put forward by the government, is identifying that faith factors have a problem and they lead to political violence. Next, using untrained members of civil society, like doctors, health professionals, teachers in schools, nursery teachers, to risk profile faith-based practices. And look at things like, for example, dress code. Suddenly somebody's changed their dress code. Somebody started growing a beard. Somebody's being more open about religious practice. Somebody who suddenly started wearing a headscarf, niqab, or a thobe. And those who mix with those who believe Islam has a comprehensive political philosophy. These are indicators that are being used as high risks of those who are engaged or are at risk of political violence. Notice I'm using the word political violence and not extremism. Because extremism is a governmental jargon word that is being used to oppose our beliefs in some instances. And it's complete fallacy. Next, to identify these as indicators of the PREVENT program is a form of discrimination against Muslims. It's a form of discrimination against a faith community. It's flawed, and in fact it's counterproductive. It will have, and it can lead to quite serious consequences. The whole objective of the PREVENT agenda was to prevent political violence. But having such a program could have quite the opposite effect of what it was set out to do. Next, clearly the PREVENT program claims that religion is the root of this problem, which is very problematic. The Government Home Office and Foreign Office, they have manufactured and heavily funded civil society organisations like the Quilliam Foundation to produce counter-propaganda against things like ISIS and Al-Qaeda propaganda. And there's this element of the conveyor belt theory, that ideology leads to radicalism and political violence, which is flawed. The government is funding organisations to put forward anti-extremist propaganda. They are spending so much money doing that. If they were to set that fund and that money into programs which build capacity within the Muslim community to deal with this, they would probably get better results. There are many community organisations well placed to deliver and ensure that this program is addressed in the communities, but the government will not engage with them. Why is the government not engaging with the core Muslim community? Why is it engaging with organisations like Quilliam Foundation, which do not even represent Muslims, and probably have absolutely no idea how the intricate working relationship exists within Muslim communities? Radicalization is a term used by the government that describes a process that nobody understands. Nobody truly understands what radicalization is. What is it that tips a person to violent extremism? No scientist to this day, or social scientist to this day, can truly identify what that factor is. And for the government to jump on its bandwagon and then assume and consider that there is this thing called an extreme Islam, which can lead to that, is a complete fallacy and it's complete nonsense. Acts of political violence is an extreme form of politicization by driving a feeling of being closed off. And this is a very, very important thing to understand. That when people become politically violent, the agenda behind them, we're not saying that there's any good in this kind of behavior also. In fact, we're solely opposed to any form of political violence. But anybody who's weird enough or tapped in the head to go on and do something like this, in essence, the reality behind them is it's a form of politicization. Now, if we sort of, in any form or manner, we do not allow people to express themselves openly in these spaces, and we close off and isolate them, this is not going to lead to positive change in society. The debate should be opened. People who have certain understandings about the politics and the foreign policy of this country should be allowed to speak out and discuss and debate. Isn't that what liberty stands for? Isn't that what the politics of this country stands for? Isn't that what we call British values? The Prevent programme closes down and represses speech and expression and prevents them to express their frustration and grievances and political change in a closed social and political system. It prevents that. The government, in essence, by moving forward this Prevent agenda, is suppressing our freedom of speech, our ability to talk out. Now, Prevent will have a chilling effect on the open debate. It's going to have an issue with our free speech. Any kind of political dissent by Muslims will be impacted by this heavily, in a serious manner. As Muslims, we are not allowed to oppose the government. Is that considered as British values? Where you discriminate against a faith community and disallow them, criminalize them because they have issues with government policy. The other thing is, and this is really serious, this militarized, secularized policy that the government is using and bringing into our educational establishments, our health service, is causing, number one, an absolute nightmare upon those members of staff who are required to police and are being coerced to be involved with politicized and sensitive issues, which they're clearly not trained to do. And in essence, as a result of this, what it's doing is it's sidelining them for the true role that they have and giving them a role that clearly is not within their remit. To police the Muslim community, to be suspicious of children, Muslim children in schools. And clearly, if you talk to these professionals, they feel very uncomfortable about this. That's one thing. And the second thing is the guidance that's out there for them. And there's a debate about this. I was listening to somebody very recently, and they were saying, okay, we accept that the Prevent programme is failing us. What we need to do is we need to ensure that the frontline staff, they are trained better. What a load of rubbish. It's got nothing to do, even if you train them in the best way that they could be trained, it's got nothing to do with their training. The guidance that they are given is the problem. It's uninformed and it has ambiguous indicators. Since when has the Muslim community been engaged to decide on what these indicators should be? If a Muslim boy was to suddenly grow a beard, start practicing his faith, and then he starts talking about foreign policy, then he would have to be reported. Where goes the freedom of speech? Is this not discrimination against the Muslim community? And reality is, it's not about training. It's about these stupid indicators that have been put forward there. Using religious symbols. Anybody who gets politically active And there are racialized elements that are being used here. They are racial based. This whole prevent agenda is racist. This whole prevent agenda is racist, and it's a form of discrimination. And religious conservatism is considered as a form of extremism that needs to be monitored and regulated. Since when? We have religious conservatism in every faith. Why is it being discriminated solely against the Muslim community? There is absolutely no connection between Islamic ideology and political violence. There's no evidence for this whatsoever. So, in essence, these are Islamic phobic policies. Clearly, if they're not considered even by those people who are in power as being Islamic phobic policies, they soon will be. Because what this will do is, in essence, it's marginalizing Muslims. It's discriminating against Muslims. If Muslim children, Muslim youth, Muslim adults are applying for work at institutes, it's encouraging the behavior of discrimination against Muslims. And reality is that it's given the green card for you to be racist, which goes solely against the British values that our Prime Minister keeps talking about. Truly, it's a racist program. And in essence, while much of the prevent policy is aimed at those suspected of Islamist extremism and far-right activity, there is genuine concern that other groups will also be affected by such policies, such as anti-austerity and environmental campaigners. That's why you are now seeing many non-Muslim groups, organizations, realizing that there is some serious issues with this whole program. Not too long ago, a number of social scientists and academics got together and wrote to the government saying, please do not go ahead with this program, because this is going to lead to marginalizing the Muslim community, and it's going to lead to serious issues. Today, even if you are to look at some of the most reputable papers that are online, mainstream media, and when you go down and read the comments about certain articles about Muslims, there's blatant racism there. Kick the Muslims out of the country. There's even comments like, kill them. They should not be given any rights. Lock them all up. If we said that about Jews, or even said it against Christians, or even said it against blacks, would not that be racism? These people have been given the green card to come out with crazy and racist and fascist comments like this. And nobody is doing anything about it. Rather, the government has an indirect agenda, and it's actually encouraging this behavior. We believe that Prevent has failed, not only as a strategy, but also the very communities it seeks to protect. If there's anybody who has a greater concern about political violence, surely it's the Muslims. There's a couple of things that I want to leave with you, and it's just an initial action for us as a Muslim community. Unity amongst Muslims is absolutely essential. We need to bring and build the strength within the Muslim community, and the guidance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ. Hold on to the rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Be united, because there are elements and serious challenges that are to come. And one of them is the government's consultation on out of schools being regulated. Now, for those of you who have read the government counter-extremism strategy, it identifies these woolly terms like British values. Can I just explain? British values, they're just values. Why you made them British? Many of those values are Islamic values. There's an element of liberty within us. There's an element of democracy amongst us. There's an element of giving right to each other, which is clearly in line with what they call British values. These are universal values. Let's uphold universal values about human rights. Let's not marginalize and bring some values and solely state them solely for the sake that you feel that the Muslim extremism element is averse to it. which is absolute rubbish. So, as a Muslim community, what should we do? We should turn to Allah. First and foremost, we should turn to Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, have taqwa. And build resilience within our community, that we continue and we die on Iman. That is the essence. Then, there are other things that we must do. And like I explained before, ذَلِكَ عَدَعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. The Nabi of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that the weakest of your Iman is that you just hate it in your heart. But no, we must do more than that. We must become more active. Every member of our community must be active. We should volunteer our time to those organizations that are opposing the whole government prevent strategy and program. Not just in terms of our voluntary time, but in terms of our finance. It's only a matter of time before these organizations start coming to us in our masajid, in our institutes, and they turn to the Muslim community for financial support. And I really mean this. We need to be prepared for that. We need to raise awareness of the government's plans to everyone. There are other means, signing a petition, which is on the website. If you all go to Keep Mosques Independent website, to sign up to that. Something very, very important, and I think it's so important that we do this, is we discuss this policy with wider society. Let's not just discuss it amongst us. Let's open up the discussion to wider society. We invite all people to come and discuss with us Islamic values. What's your understanding of Islamic values? We have Islamic values. What's the problem with them? All people, including non-Muslim neighbors and colleagues, you should go and you should talk to non-Muslims. Open up our mosques and madrasas so that wider society can gain a better appreciation of Islam and our institutes. We need to do this. We need to be transparent. And this is something that we need to do. And we welcome discussion and even debate. However, it seems those of them who want to close the discussion feel they cannot defeat the Islamic values by speech. So now they've resorted to working and regulating our masajid. And some of the issues related to that is that the regulation is also about the curriculum that we teach in our masajid and our madrasas. All it takes is one institute which is probably disorganized, it has teachers that are not qualified, it has some safety and health issues maybe, and you watch how that will be put and escalated in the media. And when that is escalated in the media, what's the government going to do? Disproportionately penalize the whole Muslim community as a basis of this. And this is why we need to stop it now. We have zero tolerance to the government's prevent strategy. We have zero tolerance to the government's prevent strategy. And reality is that the clear message is we need to keep our mosques independent. There should be no government interference in the way we teach our children and the way we teach each other Islam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to act about what has been said. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.